Hello, Happy New Year. I read 75 books in 2022, 0 books in 2023. I didn't even technically finish my assigned reading for French. I just kind of made it up on the assignments. And then in 2024, I read 1 book. That 1 book was Struggles of a Dreamer by Yaya Barua. For some reason, I felt very compelled to leave a review of this book. I don't know if it was because I just was excited that I finally got the time to read again, or if I just felt like talking. But one of the last videos I posted on my book talk was kind of like this, just like a sit-down chat. I don't remember what it was at all. It will not be spoiler-free, so if you're dying to read Struggles of a Dreamer, go do that now, and then come back. Okay, I think we're good. The way I even came across this book was because my grandparents were just kind of shopping around for Christmas, and there was an author doing like a book signing, so they picked it up. They kind of, like, my grandma had a conversation with him and thought it was a pretty compelling story that he wanted to tell, and thought the author seemed very genuine, so she got it. So now I have a signed copy. I had high hopes for the book because it would be really cool if I really liked the book and then had a signed copy. I did enjoy the book. I did not rate it 5 stars. There were some parts that were definitely 5-star worthy and some parts that were like, really not for me. So before I get into my review, I feel like it's probably a good idea to give you some context. The story follows a beggar in New York. His name is Tunde, and we find out that he is originally from Nigeria and he moved to North America to kind of start a better life for his family. After arriving in Toronto, he falls into some debt and he ends up not being able to send money back to his family anymore, and because of that he starts to feel like a failure and fall deeper and deeper into this pit, and then he ends up homeless, and he never actually explains how, but he somehow ends up in New York, which is where we meet him. So one day a rich woman gets out of a car and hands Tunde an envelope, and in it is a book. After he ends up in the hospital, which is where we discover his backstory when he's talking to his nurse, he kind of has a change of perspective and he's like, no, I'm gonna pull myself out of this. The first step is the book. Why would a rich woman leave me a book when she could very easily leave me a $20 bill? So he goes back and he finds the book, and he finds a note from the woman saying that she was in a very similar situation to him, kind of feeling stuck, no way out, and not a lot of money, and the book really helped her. So she has seen him every day outside of her office building. She has found a lot of success. She's the owner of the company, and she wants him to now have this knowledge. So that's part 1. The book is split into 3 parts. The first part is pretty short. Part 2 is where the majority of the story happens. So in part 2, we are now reading the book that he has been given. And this is set at some time in the past, in some place in Africa. We're never really told exactly where or when, but to set the scene a little bit, it's a time of like villages, trade, kings, that kind of thing. And we meet a boy named Tokute, and he is the son of a farmer, but he keeps having these recurring dreams that he wants something more. He wants to be a really successful merchant. So he now has to decide, do I want to stick to the path that my family has chosen, which is farming, or do I want to go off and do my own thing? And the author focuses a lot on that. That's his main plot point, but also tied to it is the fact that he needs to like build up his finances from nothing. So that part is another main focus of Tokute's story. So Tokute ends up leaving to go make a name for himself as a merchant, and he meets a lot of people on the way, and we get to hear about their backstories as well. That's a very quick summary of a lot of stuff that happens to him, but at the end of the book, we are back in Tunde's story somewhere, somehow. I don't actually know how long it's been. All I know is that he goes from being a beggar to being at the airport. I'll read this. So we finish Tokute's story, and then we get the arrival terminal at the airport was crowded with people, some rushing up and down the vast hallways, others sitting in... Okay, I'm not reading that. So we get a little bit of just background. He's at the airport. Tunde, the man who had once been a beggar on the streets of New York City, was among the people waiting at the arrivals gate. We don't know how long it's been, like I said, but then it says that Tunde had succeeded in making his own dream a reality, and now he was waiting to reunite with his family. So, that is where we leave off. So now let's get a little bit more into the review, and hopefully I'll be able to describe in a little bit more detail what happens in the massive second part of the book that actually takes up, like, I think it's actually half the book that I just summarized in one sentence. So my very first thought, and this came to me in the first part, which again is like 30-something pages long, was don't let English teachers get a hold of this book. If they do, every single child in that English class will be writing an essay on identity and tradition versus following your heart, which are very important themes in this book. Now, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I like ate that up absolutely in high school, and I would see something, and I was even doing it now. I was like, oh, well, would you look at that? For example, the business that the successful woman, is her name Tracy? That's probably something I should remember. Let me see. Yes, her name is Tracy. So the successful woman's name is Tracy, and she names her business after the main character. That, for example, I was like, I don't know, I just noticed that and I was like, I would have absolutely destroyed that in an essay. But yeah, we're not an English class, so we can probably move on. At the beginning, when we had first met Tunde and we were in New York, I really enjoyed the tone of the book, and I felt like I could picture everything. Just felt like the author really took his time in setting the scene and introducing the character. And Tunde really grew on me very quickly, starting from like a neutral, I don't know who this person is, to like enjoying the story he had to tell. The concept of the book within the book was also very cool to me. The one thing that was a little bit strange about that was that he could have dedicated the entire middle section to the book, but instead he chose to like pull out for a second to be like, oh, Tunde was like still reading the book and finding new lessons, and it just kind of took me out of it in a weird way. Yes, very strong start. Towards the middle though, it kind of started to feel like the story wasn't super fleshed out. So like I said, Tokute meets a lot of characters on the way to becoming a successful merchant like he wanted to, and a lot of the lessons we learn are through dialogue with those characters. But the characters kind of just speak in paragraphs, and every once in a while, again, the author just takes you out of it with like, the waiter poured them more water, and you're like, okay, well that doesn't help the story at all. It doesn't, I don't need to know that. So he very much flipped between like vivid imagery and just dialogue, but then he was like, oh wait, no, I need more descriptive language, so then he threw something in there. And again, I think I would have preferred if he'd done one or the other. My other thing is that they really set it up to seem like Tunde needed to learn how to save his money or how to pull himself out of hardship, but then Tokute's lesson was straying from tradition and following your heart, and I didn't really see many parallels in their stories until a couple of paragraphs where the author just wrote about how to save money, and like it felt like it was in there to speak directly to Tunde and then nothing else. Like it didn't fit in the rest of the story very well. So either Tunde had two main struggles and they only really talked about one, even though the tradition thing was an even bigger issue for him, or the author had two stories to tell, or like one story to tell and he needed a vessel through which he could do that, but he didn't actually have anything to say about Tunde and Tokute like together. But the lessons actually really did resonate with me. There were a couple of parts where it felt like he was talking directly to me, and like speaking on my experiences, and that was really nice to read. And I think that that part fit very well in the story, and the whole time you could very much tell that the author had an important story to tell. Now, the last nitpicky thing I have is that I'm gonna sound a certain way, but just hear me out. So, because so much of it is set in, like, ancient times, I don't know about ancient, I genuinely don't know when this was, but like it's clearly not the modern day. It would make sense that some of the characters had kind of backwards ideas about women, and he does choose to acknowledge those things. What he fails to acknowledge kind of feels like, again, it's not really a critique on the writing, because the writing is fine, and I don't expect everyone to have these issues be top of mind, but a lot of the time, the way he talked about women and told their stories was a little bit strange. So, firstly, Tracy dropped out of engineering school because she felt like her baby was a blessing. That alone is fine. Then she starts a boutique, which I don't know what that has to do with engineering, and we never hear anything much about her story, so we don't know if that was a dream of hers or if it's just kind of something that the author was like, oh, well, we can call it Too Cute, spelt like almost like Tokute, and then it makes sense. That actually didn't really occur to me until in the second part. We're talking about how the men of Tokute's village do like all of the hard labor, while the women just tend to the house and the children and the cooking, and every day they get to just gossip with their friends at the water. It was a little, I don't know, it just seems a little ignorant. It's like the way that he brought up that women didn't exactly have equal footing at that time, but then didn't address any kind of like modern day issues with that. It was like, why would you bring it up at all then? It just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And every female character like seems to have being a mother the center of their identity. For example, Tokute's mother had dreams of her own to follow, and then she says, "To my regret, I did not follow my heart. I married without the hope that I might one day pursue what I most desired. Yet grateful I am to the gods for blessing this family with such a young man as you, my son. And it was well worth the sacrifice of my dream to have the gods bless me with you as a son, a much more important gift." So basically, it's just like, well, it sucks that I didn't get to follow my dream, but even better, I get to watch you follow your dream, which is just like, I don't. So there's Tokute's mother, who's not named. There's Tracy, who we know her story. There's a princess that Tokute learns about from one of his mentors, you could say. And her whole story is that she's a princess who ran away to be with the man of her dreams and died during childbirth, and she has nothing else about her. And there's Tunde's wife, which we never actually hear anything except for the fact that she's like taking care of their sons. This wasn't intended to be like a feminist book. It's just like the fact that he, instead of choosing to just completely ignore these things, he kind of dipped his toes into it, but then was like, it's... Now, although the ending did kind of seem like it just appeared and suddenly we're at the airport, I hope that it's something like the way we discover his origin story, where he starts telling his family about everything he did, or maybe he writes a book or something. So I definitely do want to read the sequel. So according to my grandma, the second book will be out soon. Oh no, the book is out. Oh. Okay, well, that's great. So I can read it. When I first read it, because you're coming off of the whole story, and then the last thing just feels very abrupt and kind of underwhelming. But the more I sit with it, the more I'm like, no, I think that was probably strategic. It's just combined with the fact that the middle of the book was like all dialogue for the sake of telling a story and it didn't feel connected to Tunde's. Now that we're back with him and we don't have any backstory, makes it feel like the book was never really about him. But I do think that that was probably actually just setting up for the next book. So I'd be interested to read that. Overall, I gave the book 3 out of 5 stars. When I finished it last night or 2 nights ago, I gave it 2.5. But then it's so Normal People by Sally Rooney grew from a 2 star to like a 4.5, I think, star for me. So something similar could happen with this book. Just the longer I sit on it and like the feeling it gave me, the better it gets. And that's one thing that I think is really important about the books that I read. I love it when that happens. When reading it is great, but you only read it for the first time once, and I think that the impact that it has on you after that says more about how it was. I am hoping that I read a few books in 2025. I am going to try to pick up the book that put me in my year-long reading slump, The Secret History. It will happen. I will read it, and I will start that tomorrow. Oh, the text is very small. No, the text is book-sized, but the text in this book is, like, really large. So, it went by really fast, and now this is gonna go by not really fast. So, thank you for listening to me talk for hopefully not 23 minutes. I hope to edit a lot of that down. But, have a happy new year.